Well, tonight, Nancy was thinking tonight was training and that I was going to do about Descendants, but it worked out so perfect because I did the Descendant class yesterday for Roots Tech for my boss. And so I'm going to do the same thing today. So if you were there yesterday, you're going to see the same thing. And there's Nancy.
She's before you start, can I give a cool report?
Yes, please.
From a Friday night.
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Dave and I were down there, and 4 people from a stake in North Orem came walking in and asked if we could help them. Said that they had wanted to go out and find a stake that was open, and they looked all over and they tried to find everything online, and we were the only ones that had anything about being there on Friday night, and so they showed up, and we had a delight. There was a young married couple and an adult couple with them, and so Dave took the 2 older folks, and I took the young people, and we had a ball. And
I'm so excited. This is great.
The interesting thing was they came North Orem to get there. They drove clear down and searched all afternoon trying to find an open family history center, and we were it. And I'll tell you, and I found out right at the end, the young lady that the recently married couple, his mother, her maiden name was Mon, Maughan, which is my mother's name, and so we found out we're related. We're something like third cousin. Anyway, so it was really and they said we're coming back next week.
Oh, right, John. You better bring your roses, chocolate.
Anyway, I told him now, he says, if you promise, I can bring roses and chocolates. And I said, I can't promise, but they both learned a lot. Learned how to, they just came in and said, I need to find out how to find some names. And then the older couple had a lot of names, but needed to find out a lot more about in-depth research. And so they took them, and I took the young couple. Like I said, we just had a ball.
Please, I'm so glad. I'm so happy for you and for us. This is awesome. Nancy, sorry, go ahead.
Pardon?
Go ahead, John. Go ahead. No, John, go ahead.
I'm through. I'm just.
Oh, okay. I thought I interrupted you. Nancy, did you want to tell your little part now before I start?
Well, I've just realized I probably can't share my screen. Let me try it and see if I can. Nope, I can't. So I'm just going to have to tell you. At the end of my lesson last week, I brought up the fact that my cousin had just died, and I wanted to add him to Find a Grave, but that he was cremated. And so I was going to have to research how to do that. And Karen, that was one of the people who was here last week, said, here's the link. And she gave us all the link. This is how you do it. You open up Find a Grave. You say you want to start a memorial. There's a checkbox on the bottom that says, not being buried in a cemetery. You click there, and then you fill it in. It's that easy. Now, the harder part is going to be sitting down and writing his wife an email and saying, please tell me your name, when you got married, where you're from. Well, I know where she's from, but to add her to my information, because somehow I have never done that. But I have only met her once. They live in Thailand. So it's not like we could visit with them often. And she does speak English. He took a trip when he retired to see the world, and he never got past Thailand. So
That's pretty far, though.
I have, pardon?
that's still pretty far.
Very far. An interesting point as I looked at the map the other night is I noticed that Thailand is next door to Vietnam, and he served 2 tours of duty in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. So it kind of surprised me to think that he would go back to that near and live happily. I think they've been married for about 15 years and live happily where he probably spent some pretty unhappy time.
Thank you, Nancy.
So that's very easy to do. And I, as I have laid along with Find a Grave a little bit this week, I discovered that I've already interviewed people that were cremated before. but I had forgotten how, but it is so easy. Okay,
awesome.
My part's finished.
Thank you. Well, before I start, since we're all telling these fun stories, let me tell you my fun story of the day before I start my lesson. So Sherry Bird in my ward was called to be a family history consultant. So we're friends. I've been friends with her since I was her Relief Society president, and which has been almost since I moved here. And I mean, really, we're good friends. So she came over to my house and I was showing her how to use Family Search. And as we're looking in the memories for her mother, I see the name Val Hubbard. And I went, Val Hubbard? She said, yeah, that's my first cousin. And I said, does he live in Texas? Yes. Was his first wife Rhonda and she died? Yes. And I said, Val Hubbard was in my ward and I was her visiting teacher until she died. I spoke at her funeral. So that was one of my best small world experiences.
Well, one of mine this week was when I asked Karen Snow today, how are you? And she told me that she so appreciates Ed Sparks and John helping her with her family history.
All right.
She's got a whole bunch of stuff, and I kind of signed her on you guys too, because she's got a whole bag full of stuff that she wants to organize it and get it together. I don't know how good she is with a computer, but she's beyond me in learning how to put all that stuff together. She's got group sheets, she's got pictures. She just needs somebody to show her what to do and collate all that into a book or a series of books. I
can't help but think that everything that she's got's on Family Search, or at least a very, very, very high percentage of it.
It probably is, yeah. But she's got to organize it first before she can understand where it is from the stuff she showed me.
Well, and she always wants to do her own family names. She's pretty lucky that she comes from a family line that has a lot already done on it.
Yeah.
Well, we'll put our thinking hats on to see how we can help her.
But she made it clear that John and Ed are better helps than I am.
Oh, funny. All right. So we're going to begin. And okay, so you all have to tell me if it's any good or not, so I know if those 300 people wasted their time or not.
They didn't.
Okay, so the class that I taught yesterday, this is price genealogy because I did it for my work, my boss. So ignore that. The theme was Descendants, and we picked Descendants because, well, it's my passion. But for people at Roots Tech who are not members of the church necessarily, there are a lot of different reasons why they may want to look for descendants. And so one reason could be DNA. For a Y DNA, many times you have that prospective ancestor way back there, and you want to see if perhaps that could be your ancestor. And so you're looking for a direct line male from your ancestor, as well as a direct line male from that ancestor, and trying to see if there's a match there. So you have to find living descendants. Even with autosomal, you've got to find living descendants of the people that you're interested in. And so that could be one reason why you want to search for descendants. You may want to look for living relatives, just so people you can connect with. I am a recipient of that. My grandmother, for some reason, got her feelings hurt and cut herself off from her father's family. Her father died when she was just a baby, and they're from Sweden. I didn't know where they were from in Sweden. But she cut herself off. Well, as it turns out, a cousin on my great grandpa's side was trying to find our side of the family. She went to some really fun ways to do it. She went to the last place where they lived in Chicago and started asking people on the street if they knew where they went. And she found us. And because of that, I learned where we came from in Sweden, and we were able to push it back over several generations because of that. So finding living relatives sometimes can provide you clues to find your answers to your puzzles. Also, descendants may help you with your brick wall. If you have a brick wall ancestor that you cannot figure out where they came from or who their parents were, sometimes it's those branches who have the clues, those descendants that may have some piece of information that will help you. Whoops, my mouse is very, very touchy. And then there's those missing chairs. You know, my theme, for those of you who know me, my theme is always no empty chairs. I'm looking for all the ones who've been missed. So in this presentation, I'm going to give 3 steps. First step is to get organized. My dad actually drew this picture for me years ago when I was trying to teach something. Isn't that how we feel sometimes? Like John was just saying that I think he feels like that with this history. He's trying to help. And I'm very methodical. For me, when I'm looking for descendants, because I have the no empty chairs theory or theme, I do all the all the greats all the way across and do all their descendants. Then I go to the next generation of the second greats and do all their descendants. Then I go to the third greats and I do all their descendants. But that's me because I want to make sure I don't miss anybody. But basically what you need to do is choose an ancestral couple from whom you wish to track your descendants. For someone looking for DNA, it's going to be a specific person. For somebody looking for living relatives, it may be a specific person. Or just like Sister Nelson, she prays about it to see where to go. So it depends on what you want to do. Then the other thing you need to do is to ensure your information is in a database. Of course, I use Family Search. And I use Family Search because I'm going to be submitting them to the temple. So it's the place to be. Of course, I didn't say this on my thing yesterday, but that's why I use Family Search. But it's important that you're going to record it somewhere online that will generate hints, like Family Search or like an ancestry tree. I have both, but I use Family Search as my database. Then you also need to have a word processing document as a tracking system so you don't get lost. And this is looks like this is the one. This is an example of what I use. For example, here's Casper Coonreich and Anna Bart, who are my third great grandparents. Catherine is their daughter. Gertrude is their daughter. Katharina and John Keller had one daughter, Margaretha. These are Catherine's children. Every indented bullet represents a generation. So I can go down, get to Ralph and his siblings, then I can go back up those siblings or whatever. But as you can see, I know exactly where I've been and I know where I'm going because it looks like I ended up right here with Solomon Ulrich and Caroline Ballard. And I want to look for their children, their grandchildren, etc. And every time I do a search, I write it here as well as in Family Search, and I know where I'm going. I know where I've been. The second step is to become familiar with the tools. Everyone knows you cannot fix a car unless you know how to use the tools. You probably cannot build something like a table or whatever unless you know how to use a saw and a hammer. You need to learn how to use the tools. These are some of my favorite tools. Family Search, Ancestry.com, Google, Find My Past, My Heritage, Find a Grave. There's so many out there, but these are the ones I've used the most. Actually, to be truthful, I use these two the most. And Google and Find a Grave. Those are my absolute favorites, but I couldn't leave some of the others out, for Roots Tech. So, but I do use them for different things. So the third step, once you familiarize yourself, at least enough to get started, if you familiarized yourself with the tools, the third step is to find the descendants. And always remember to record as you go. This is, again, an example. As you notice, I've highlighted, this time I've highlighted Solomon Ulrich, and I put a URL down here because I was working on it. And, I've got to go make dinner now. Highlight it, copy and paste the URL where I was working so I can pick it up right where I left off. That's just a reminder to record. But how are you going to find the descendants? How do you go about finding the information, finding their names, finding their birth dates, finding their birthplaces, marriage places, their children, their grandchildren? How do you go about doing that? So I have kind of an order of search here. First thing I do is I go to online trees. I go to online trees because it's one-stop shopping. I can go to an online tree and hopefully they've posted many sources on their online tree. And if they have, pretty quickly I can tell if their information is accurate or not, or what they based their assumptions on, or I shouldn't say assumptions, but their calculations or whatever on. So I want to go to those online trees first because it saves me a lot of time as I'm looking for descendants. I also go to the census. Really, online trees and censuses are pretty much hand in hand for me when I'm looking for descendants. The census we've talked about a lot lately because we're getting ready for the 1950 census, but it's the backbone of the family. I always recommend that you find them on every census and that you look at the actual census itself because you don't know who's living next door to them. It could be their in-laws. It could be their children, married children. It could be their aunts and uncles. It could be any number of relatives living next door to them. And then, of course, I put note and follow hints, and I'm talking about those hints that are a lot of times available in Ancestry, which I'll show you an example of in a minute. Vital records. When we're looking for descendants, usually when we're doing it, we're oftentimes in the 1800s and the 1900s. And so these vital records a lot of times are found within hints. And they're helpful for very, very helpful for verifying information and even finding information, like a spouse's name, for example. Because you need a spouse's name in order to be able to find their children, especially if it was a female, a daughter. Death records also, because it tells you who the informant is, and that helps to connect relationships and help you to know if that's the right person or not. I cannot emphasize obituaries enough. Obituaries name the children, hopefully, not all the time, but many times they name the children, their daughters with their married names. And so it helps to be able to extend that pedigree downwards. Cemetery records. Find a grave often and post obituaries on there. You can call the cemetery and ask them, who bought the plot? Do you have any other biographical information there? Social Security applications. These things not only help with descendants, but they help in any research problem that you have. Church records and family Bibles. Church record one time in Pittsburgh, we were able to find a church record for this woman, her marriage record, which told us where she came from in Germany. So, so I'm saying is that these records that I'm talking about here are not just for descendancy, they're for any kind of research that you're doing. Whoops. Family Bibles. Those are sometimes harder to find. Although I lucked out, and a university in Henry County, Tennessee had the Rogers Family Bible. So you might want to check a university and see what they have in their genealogical collection. So you're going to find a lot of descendants there. Histories. Family Search Catalog has county histories, as Google Books often has those same county histories or more. Internet Archives have books, and Google. Don't forget Google. That's my other best friend. In fact, I had some research I was doing for Prince Edward Island. I didn't know much about Prince Edward Island. I had never done research in Prince Edward Island before. So I Googled whatever I could about the family and Prince Edward Island. And lo and behold, there was this awesome website with families, these families from Prince Edward Island, including the one that I was looking for. And so you never know, just by Googling, you put the names in quotes, either the place where they lived or their name plus the place where their name in quote plus the place where they lived, and see what you can find. Land records, probate records. If they left a will, you always hope they're going to name their children. Unlike Daniel Rogers, who said, I leave everything to my children, and did not name them. But usually they will name them, and if their daughters are married, they'll name their married names. But if they died intestate and did not leave a will, the land records may name their children, because they may sell off that land after he died, and all the heirs would need to sign on that record. Tax and court records. You may not find descendants there, but sometimes you find some really fun information. Like I think I've told you before, one of my clients, his ancestor was a young teenager when he was hauled off to court for attempting to some kind of damage to this man. And by the end of the court case, they fined him $5. Well, he didn't have $5, and so they said the court paid it for him. So, sometimes you just find fun things in court records, and there are many court records that are indexed, so you can find things fast. Military records, especially pension records, will name the children. My Jesse Smith, who fought for the North, named all of his children and where they were born. So that was very valuable. His name was Jesse Smith, so that was extremely valuable. Immigration records, when you get into the 1900s, when they're applying for their naturalization, oftentimes they will name all their children. So that's also very helpful. Okay, so once you get down to the living, you're trying to find if that's your purpose is to find the living. Oftentimes I go to the living, and not because I can't put them in Family Search, only I can see them. But if that's your purpose is to find the living, then you want to be able to talk to them. And so how do you find them? Again, obituaries. Obituaries will often tell you where those family members are living. They'll say, so-and-so of this place, or this son of this place, and these two daughters that live in this place. So it helps you to narrow down where you want to look for their phone number or address. White Pages is free unless you want to upgrade. If you want to upgrade, of course, it costs money. I use White Pages a lot. Instant Checkmate and Tellius, you can pay per search, so you don't have to do a subscription, and see if you can find them that way. And so that you can find your living, if that's your purpose. But in any case, first you get organized, get familiar with the tools, and you start searching and record it as you go. And then your holes will be filled in. So now I just want to give you an example. All right. Oops, one more. So here I was working on the Rogers descendants. Here's Daniel Rogers and Elizabeth. Here's her daughter Cynthia, her son William, his son Samuel, John, and Lula. Here's John, and this is an old one. I've done this before, and so I was kind of double checking. But here's Daniel's daughter Cynthia, son John, then Lucretia, Lucy, Melissa, and I'm down to Harriet. So I want to know, did Harriet have a husband? Did she have children? Did her children have spouses and children? So I want to go look for Harriet. Now, if you remember, what was the first place I say I like to go to? What's the first?
Online databases.
Yes. So first of all, though, I forgot I want to bring her up on my family tree here. Okay, she's not real close. So if you notice, like I told you, I copied her PID number right here, so I know exactly where to go. I think I forgot to mention that earlier. That's a good place to do. That's a good thing to do. So I can just paste it right here, and I can find her right away where I'm working in Family Search. Here she is, Harriet Louisa Rogers. No husband. Here's her parents and all of her siblings. And I can look at the hints already here on Family Search, and they're telling me here she is in the 1850 census as Eliza. See, there's Daniel and Elizabeth and the other siblings, and she's known as Eliza here. That's kind of important information to know. So my first step is to go to the online trees. So I come over here to Ancestry because I like their search engine, and I like the hints that they bring up. And I already also have her on this tree over here. So I'm going to go to Public Member Trees. I'm going to type in her name, Harriet Louisa Rogers. And my default is that I like to click all three of these just because it's easier to remember. I just do it as default because I don't know if they're going to call her Harriet, if they're going to call her Louisa, or they're going to call her Eliza. And are they going to spell Rogers with a D or a G? I'm going to put her birth year as 1839. And again, my default is usually 5 years, unless I have a really, really common name and I need to just narrow it down a little bit. Then I may do a 2-year search. Because on the census, again, you all have seen that, the variations of when they were born and how old is your husband? Oh, I think he's this age or whatever. So we can say that she was born in Tennessee. And for her father, we could put Daniel, but I'm going to put Dan with an asterisk because I think his name is Daniel, but what if somebody else thinks his name is Dan? So I wanted to bring up anything that starts with Dan or that looks like Dan or that would bring up Daniel also, because that asterisk is a wild card. I could even put here keyword Henry. I don't need to because it will probably narrow it down. Then I'll do a search. And look at this. I've got Harriet, Louisa, Eliza Rogers. You see how important that Eliza was. So let me click on that. And anytime I see a picture on a tree, I'm feeling a little more confident about that family because if they have family pictures or there's a picture there, maybe somebody knew something. And so it might be that I can take this information seriously. But I still want to do my homework, and I want to make sure that maybe they didn't grab that picture from somebody else. So I'll look here. Here again is that 1850 census that was on Family Search. There's an 1860 census, 1880 census. You see what I mean about one-stop shopping already? There's 3 censuses I don't have to go look for. They've named a husband and a daughter. So let me just check this 1880 census. So I click View. Then on View Record, that's going to take me not to the image, but to the summary like this. I want to do a right click so I can open the link in New Tab. And I want to do that so that I can have where I was right here, and I can have the 18 census here, and I don't lose where I was. So I can look here at this census, and already her name is Eliza on here. Well, that's interesting. We have the Harriet, Louisa, Eliza. Do I know it's the same person? Well, look at these nice little hints over here. I can click on this U.S. death record for Harriet McGehee. It tells me that she was a Rogers. That's good to know. I can look at the actual death record itself, and I can see that the informant was an Albert Cruz. Now that's an interesting thought. So here we also see a marriage record. So I can open that, and there is a H.L. Rogers to a W.J. McGehee in Henry County, Tennessee, which was where she was living prior to her marriage. Well, on the census, he's known as W.J. McGehee. We also know her as Harriet Louisa Rogers. So I'm not going to take the time here, but before I will make a firm decision, I went and looked at the 1860 and 70 censuses to see if she was the only one that fits this profile. Because there's times when there may be another Harriet Louisa or an Eliza or somebody else in Henry County with the same age. There was no one. She was the only one. So I can feel pretty confident that this is the marriage for this ancestor, Harriet Louisa Rogers. So I would type W.J. McGehee over here in Family Search and their daughter, Alice. So now we have at least one descendant. So on the tree, they have Alice, and they have her married to a Crew. Well, now, isn't that interesting, since there was an Albert Cruz who signed as informant on her death record. So I want to look at this a little bit more. We go back to that 1880 census, and this time I want to click on Alice. I want to see what hints are here for her. Yeah, and Ancestry's being a little slow. Okay, so here's a marriage record. Here's a census. So we can look at this marriage record first. And they're in Weakley County. So here is a J.J. Cruz to A.L. McGehee. We can then look at that 1900 census for Alice L. Cruz, A.L. Cruz. And here's James J. Cruz with the son Jesse. And if I keep going, I'll find out that in the next census, there is an Albert Cruz who signed her death record as informant. So already I've got descendants coming. So if you can kind of get the idea of how that works, get organized, record it, get familiar with these tools, and then start searching and record as you go. Now, I'm not recording as I go right now because I've done this presentation a few times and it would have ruined it if I would have put them in there. But I will tonight. I'll get it in there tonight. Because if I put in Harriet's husband in here, and I put in Alice and Jesse, either a duplicate's going to pop up, or there may be more research helps that will appear that I can use. So that is it in a nutshell of how to do descendant research. So now I'm just going to X out of everything, and well, I won't, just in case there's questions, and just tell me if you have any questions. How can I help you?
Do you do these? Do you always start? Let's see. You start with Family Search, and then you go to Ancestry because they have good hints. And do you buy an account with Ancestry, or do you just use your church link into it? Or
I just use my church one. Yeah.
And that's good enough.
My free account. Oh yeah. The free account will get you everything, except I've noticed that Manchester, it won't let you get the Manchester records. But that's the only thing I've ever not been able to get on Ancestry. I have access to everything through our church account. Just occasionally it will say, oh, sorry, your free account doesn't cover this.
And what's the Manchester account? I don't know what that
Oh,
means.
Manchester, England.
Oh, okay.
The records of Manchester, England. For some reason, the parish priest there or whoever it is, I don't know, they're not giving permission for people other than Ancestry to see that. So they're not letting Family Search have free access to that.
I ran into a computer on Friday that did not let us into Ancestry automatically. It was the one closest to the printer.
Oh, great. Can you tell Richard and have him check on that?
Well, yeah.
We on Wednesday night, we had so many youth here that it was so confusing that we removed the 2 non-functioning computers from the Family History Center main room and put them across the hall.
Okay, the one, brother, whatchamacallit, they're working on replacing the one that won't turn on, the good one that won't turn on.
Okay,
They're working with Family Search to replace that one.
good. I hope that you could get Family Search to replace both of them, because we, sometimes we have a quiet day and then we have 17 kids come on a Wednesday night and we
Nancy,
don't have enough computers.
What other one are you talking about?
There's the one in the northeast corner.
Tower one?
And the one in the middle of the south wall.
Okay. The one in the middle of the south wall, we're working on replacing. The one that has the tower, I don't know if we can replace. I'm not sure if that was a personal donation or something.
I don't think it was a personal donation. I just think it's so very old that the church no longer supported anything on it because it was so old. So what I'd say is just try to get 5 new ones, but whatever you can do, we'll be happy with.
Well, if we're having that many, when I turn in my reports, I think that will probably give us good.
Yes, 17 here on Wednesday, and I brought my husband's computer and my computer, and there were still some computers that had 3 people working on it.
That's great.
In cases like that, do you use the big screen or can you?
Well, for a little lesson I used the big screen, but when everybody was trying to index to see who could index, then everybody needed their own.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, does anyone have any questions about or thoughts or even ideas about descendant research?
I have a little one, and that was when you started off, you said, to me, I always define there's 2 ways of doing family search and looking for names and things and filling in empty chairs. One is just the typical way of going, from father to son, going back as far as we can. And then because you've taught me, I tell people that's not the most effective way. There is a better way, and that's the descendancy. That's coming back toward us and filling in all those empty spaces. I don't know whether I didn't get that from your approach as you begun. I don't know whether you did it different or whether they would have understood it. And maybe that's just my personal preference. So, but that's a comment that I made. And there was one other that I was going to say something about military records but I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, don't we? I mean, if you come from a family where lots of records have been done, don't you need to kind of see what's been done already?
Well, the thing is, especially with people with pioneer ancestors, what I recommend is that you go to the generation that did not die in Utah. Because if you're at that generation that didn't die in Utah, then their siblings possibly didn't come to Utah. And those are the ones that you want to look for. Because I mean, with my one client, when I first started with her, I did check her member descendants because I wanted to see, and some of them did go to California. And there were some names that I found because they went to California and their children left the church. And so I was able to track those down and find a few missing people that were left out. But generally speaking, my parents were converts. So I started with my grandparents and made sure everybody was there, and my aunts and uncles and everybody. Then I went to my great grandparents and made sure all of their children and their siblings and their children were taken care of. Then I went to my great great grandparents and I started working on each one of those and looking for each of their descendants, coming all the way down. And right now I think I'm on my third great grandparents and working down. But for most people, especially here in Utah, if your parents aren't converts like mine, then you want to start with the generation that did not die in Utah and just start looking at those descendants.
And I can give an example here of how Diane convinced me that Descendancy was really good. Is I'm like you, all the Bairds and the Mons and everybody on my side is, quote, has all been done. And so Diane took me back to the Mon family that was born in the last group that was born in England before they came here. And sure enough, as you look down on the list, out at the very end was a daughter, and there was no information on the daughter. So Diane says that's where we start. And so she started with that and found out, oh my goodness, we found her that she didn't come to Utah. She was born and raised in England, and then all of a sudden she showed up in Australia. And
where?
Australia. And,
okay.
And we found, and then she gave me 4 or 5 names right there of her husband and the children. So then that took me back, and I said, well, what was she doing in Australia? And I looked up the guy she married, and the guy she married also used to live in the same town in England, but he was arrested. He was stealing bread or something like that. And back then, the English government, if you were arrested, rather than send you to jail, they sent you to Australia to serve your prison sentence and populate Australia. Well, that's what happened to this guy. And this girl, the Mon girl, apparently was in love with the guy, and she followed him later to Australia. They got married while he was still in prison. So that tells you what kind of prison it was. They have 3 kids in prison and then 1 when he got out. And now they're still in Australia. But all those names of all those families have been done because of that person that was out on the end of the thing that people have ignored. And all those great genealogists in the Mons who've got, I got stacked.
Well, but you have to realize too, is that because of modern technology now, we were able to find it quickly because Ancestry has all those hints. I mean, they have a hint for her in Australia that I never would have thought of. And so that's why I like to use those hints, whether they're on Family Search or Ancestry, because their algorithms is not the right word, Nancy. They try and find these people. And Brother Ogden's, he had a whole line that went to Australia that we found. And there's a lot of those English people that went to Australia and they're online. Their marriage records, their birth records, their death records are online. And so it's
yeah, and none of those
when they couldn't find it 10 or 20 years ago, we can find it in a heartbeat now.
Yeah, and none of their work was done.
Yeah.
For that whole.
Yeah, if any of you have English ancestors, come and see me, because those descendants are just hopping off the page. As are the Germans, Angel.
My son was looking the other day. I don't remember if it was Family Search hints or Ancestry hints, but there were some newly indexed records from the Church of England, the generation farther back, 2 generations farther back than what we had been before on the Hugo line. And so church records made it very clear. This this is the father and this is the grandfather, and now he's going to take the initiative now and check for other children of those parents. But he was just elated to think that he could find it, and he would have never thought to look, and apparently we hadn't looked either, in those church records to see if there were other family members there. But anytime I go back a generation, I always check. I'm not good about going all the way down, but I always check at least all of the person's children and siblings and nieces and nephews, and get as much as I can on them and get the temple work done for them.
I come all the way down, at least
Good
to
for you.
1912.
Okay.
And I didn't mention on there what, because it was mostly for non-members, but I also have another list I call Lest We Forget. And so when I'm looking at those children and I'm getting close to the year 1912, half of the children may be born before 1912 and I can submit them. And half of the children were born 1914, 1916, 1918, and I can't submit them yet. Well, I don't want to get them. I don't want to forget them. That's why Lest We Forget. I do not want them to be forgotten. So I have a page that's called Lest We Forget, and I put the month and the year that I can submit them, their name with their PID number. And so every month I go through and I look, okay, who else needs to be submitted now? And that way I can actually tell them if they're listening, see, I'm not going to forget you. You're right here. You're on my list. I'll get to you whenever I can.
So what is 1912? I know probably everybody knows.
Oh, it's the 110-year rule. That's a very good, thank you for asking that, Jeannie. It's the 110-year rule that you cannot reserve a name for the temple for someone who was born within the last 110 years without permission from the closest living relative. So 1912 is 110 years from now. So if I found someone that was born April 1912, then I couldn't reserve them until April of this year. So I'd put them on my little list, April 2022, with their name and their PID number, and then I would submit them next month.
Thank you.
Okay, Diane.
If you have proof,
Yes.
it doesn't matter if you have proof they're dead. You have to be in.
Well, 110 years is also the cutoff for their death. So if you have to have at least knowledge of their death. You don't necessarily have to have a death date as long as you know that they're dead. They assume anybody who has lived longer than 110 years is dead. That's their assumption.
Okay. And we have to prove that they're dead for anyone later.
Right. Or yeah. And usually Find a Grave will help you with that. Usually you can find them there, or an obituary or something will help you to find that.
Okay, Diane. So
Yes.
I've done this. And so I went back on my mirror line. And so then I found the wife. I found a wife. And then I found her parents. So then when I added them to so I won't do the temple work for her parents because it's not part of my line. But I still added them on Family Search.
Yes. You'll help somebody else by doing
Yes.
that. So that's good.
But then it took me to Find a Grave, and it has an obituary, and then it shows their siblings. Do I add their siblings, even though it's not on my line? It's her line.
No, it's
Does
up
that
to
make
you.
sense?
Sometimes if I'm in a hurry, I don't always, but then I get this, somebody's going to be so glad if I did this.
Right, right.
I might.
I might. Okay.
Well, and
Definitely
let me tell you a funny thing, Angel, because
Okay.
eventually what has happened to me a lot of times is that the parents may already be in there, and I'll go click on those parents and they'll be related also.
Oh, okay.
Maybe way, 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 way back, but they oftentimes
Eventually they'll be related. Yeah.
Yeah.
'cause
So
And
I
then-
click on that, find your relationship, especially if I didn't add the parents and
Mhm.
somebody else did, and just check and see if maybe
Right.
I might by chance be related.
So,
to
and
them.
then what I did is I went to look at a tree on Ancestor, and then you put the information in, and then if you refresh the tree on Family Search, all of a sudden it starts popping all these hints, and
Yep.
you don't have to go find them.
Yep. Yes, that's why I said keep on an online database, because it generates hints.
Yes.
And in fact, we've talked about that at work, that with so many of our clients that are not LDS, we're trying to let them know that it's important that we put it in Family Search, because it generates hints and will help us with their research. So, yeah.
So anyway, all the people are not in the 110 window, but that's okay.
Put them on your lest we forget list.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
But have two lists. One is the database, and one is your list.
Yes,
We
I have
forget
two.
page.
I have two of them. Yeah.
Go ahead and put them in. One of my other favorite things to do, because I'm amazed at how often it fills in information, is when I'm looking at sources. Often a source will say, especially if somebody that was not really a genealogist attached the sources, it will say, not everyone in this record has been attached. And so then I look up and see who's not attached and try to figure out why. And sometimes it's because the name was indexed like Pew instead of Hugh, and so they didn't know if it was the same person, so they didn't attach them. Even though they were born at the same time and they're the head of the household, or whatever. But sometimes it's the father-in-law or the mother-in-law or the cousin that's not attached. And so if it's a father-in-law not attached, and you can search for that father-in-law then in Family Search, or do a little bit of other searching in a census or something, you can find it, you can connect that person that's the father-in-law or whatever to the rest of his family, and you can really make a lot of connections. And maybe it isn't temple work today, but nonetheless it's completing families. So I always, when I'm looking at sources, I look for unattached people out of a source. Does that do you understand what I said I do? Did I explain it?
Did to me.
Okay, Michelle.
I didn't fully understand it.
You didn't understand?
No.
Okay, well, I can't share my screen, and I don't know right off the top of my head which is one, but let's just say that I'm looking for so-and-so, and I find them in the 1870 census, and they're attached. So somebody found them, they were a hint, and somebody attached them, and so now their sources listed in Family Search. But so I look at that, I look under the sources in Family Search, and I look at each source. And so when I open up the 1870 census as a source, it's going to say not everybody that's listed is attached. So then I open it up to see who isn't attached, and it's probably the father-in-law or the mother-in-law or the cousin. And so then I can say, oh, she married John Smith, but John Smith's father apparently is Abel, because he's listed here as the father-in-law. And so then I can look up Abel in Family Search, and maybe he's already there, but maybe his son isn't listed with him. And so I can check and make sure that family's all listed together in Family Search.
Thank you. That helps.
That's something I make it a point to do.
You ever get the idea you're going to die before you finish all this?
That is my biggest fear. It's like I've been telling the Lord, let me live really long with a brain, because I have so much I need to do. I mean, it keeps coming out of the woodworks. I got this book on my temples from the library that's taking me everywhere. I've got this other book on my Kenriches. It's just everywhere. So, but I need a brain.
Well, I don't think I'm going to get it all done. But one thing that I do see a need for now, and I had never thought of it till a few months ago, and that is, before we die, we need to make a plan for who is going to get our records. For example, my one cousin Edith is the one person who tried to make sure she had every birth, marriage, and death that happened. You know, she'd nag me. Who did Joanna marry? When did they get married? Who are his parents? And so now she's dead. Who has those records? I sure would like them. Her kids tell me they're not ready to scan her stuff yet. Well, that won't be scanned. That'll be in a path file or in a Roots Magic file. Well, they don't know where it would be or where it is or whatever. And so we kind of need to make a plan before we die about who's going to get these records. She maybe already knows who Les married in Thailand and when. That's probably already in her files. But if nobody has her files, it doesn't do us any good.
Nancy,
So,
I'd like to follow up with that. Can you hear me?
yes.
We just made a trip back to meet a lot of our family members. We covered 13 states, 5,000 miles to go to a wedding.
Wow.
Wow.
But one of the people that I wanted to connect with was my cousin, who ended up inheriting the records from her mother, who did a lot of family history. And I was just wanting to get copies, but actually, because of weather, we had to abort Iowa and head for somewhere else. Well, anyway, she came down to Missouri and connected with us. And that's the very thing she said. She's concerned that there's nobody in the family that has an interest that's going to keep those records or do anything with them. And she turned to us and she said, you guys will do something with these records. She says, I'm thinking I'm going to have to, turn them over to you, but no concrete plan's been made, but you really hit right on the money on that, because those records, if she passes before we do, then but anyway, it would be nice to have those records. Every time I go back, I try and find out something from what she has. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. I told so this is my cousin. I told her daughter, maybe you can take that flash drive and put the whole flash drive on Dropbox, or maybe you want me to Venmo you money and you can buy a flash drive and copy her flash drive and mail it to me. Whatever you want to do, I'll do. You live in Juneau, Alaska. I can't just come over on a Sunday afternoon, but I sure do want those records.
Yeah.
So definitely.
We have to develop a plan. So glad you mentioned that.
Well, that's a good
Well,
note.
I told my kids.
Sorry.
I told my kids, when I die, throw everything away except my family history. And then they get all upset and say, and I say, if you want it, you can have it. But anything that I have, you have to know it's already given me joy. So you can throw it away. You don't have to spend $1,000 mailing it to people who might not want it, because that's what we did when my sister died. But my genealogy needs to be kept, but I haven't said, and this is the part that you need, this is the computer that I have my database on, and this is the books that I've done. And, I haven't specified what I mean when I say, except my genealogy.
Okay, well, this is a